Check the mic and make sure it sound right.
And I hope the mic does sound right. Hi, I'm DK Will. This is DK Will Talk About It. And I was spending some time with a friend who is a teacher. And she teaches the 6th grade this year, which is about 11-year-olds. And she gave me an update on some of the conditions in the schools. And she told me that she had been referred to as a white bee, a bitch, like a female dog, by an 11-year-old student. She told me about how one student went nuts inside the school and overturned everything, destroyed the classroom, and was back the very next day. And so I am going to do a video to touch on that. I am not a social justice warrior of any sort. I am not an activist or revolutionist, I guess is the word for it. What I am is a paradigm whisperer, and when I speak, I'm speaking to whoever clicked on this video. And then what you do with it is up to you, because see, I'm a paradigm whisperer. And I'm going to talk about the difference between growing up and being raised. But we have to acknowledge in this twisted time that we live in, as the caricature cartoon over there shows, the teacher asking the children, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And the child answers, "Alive." It's very difficult to say them little rascals are so terrible, because children are a product in their environment. So let's talk first about growing up. You see, there's a difference between growing up and being raised. And as you can see on the left, those trees are alive and green, and they grew up in that environment. One that you probably wouldn't want to walk around in unless you were a scientist or geologist of some sort, botanist of some sort. But over to the right, you can see other trees that also grew up in a garden. Because see, they were raised, they were cultivated, and I'm sure that path is very inviting as to whether or not we would want to walk on it. Our children are not much different than the seeds of these trees, the saplings of these trees. So we're not going to put the blame on the children, although they have a responsibility too. This is for the parents. This is for the teachers. I tip my hat to y'all. This is for the grandparents. This is for the role models in those children of ours' lives. It's no secret that the productivity of education in our modern day is declining. And there's a lot of contributing factors to that decline. But as I said, this is for the parents, the role models, the teachers included, grandparents, all of us who have any impact on our children of today. Because yes, there's a lot of pressure against successful education. Education costs is one of them, which has risen significantly over the years, while learning has stagnated. This article here also touches on the sources of educational failure, but it goes on to talk about the high price of an inefficient education system. It says here, the United States ranks dead last among 26 countries tested on math gains, and second to last on literacy gains across these generations. The countries who have the largest math gains include South Korea, Slovenia, France, Poland, Finland, and the Netherlands. That's a sad story. So what could be contributing to such an environment? Well, like I mentioned, Parents, what are you sending to the teachers to be taught? Here, this article brought out that student violence on teachers is a growing concern. So what can be done? Those who we are entrusting with educating our children and in effect, and nowadays, for the most of the day, raising our children, number one, it doesn't absolve the parents of the responsibility to raise their children. But you're putting so much on the teachers to take care of your children until you can get back to your job as a parent and raising your children so that when they go to school, they're ready to learn and respect their teachers. Now, this talks about a teacher shortage in Canada, but my friend, the teacher I mentioned earlier that I was talking to, told me that a woman who had over 20 some years left her career because of conditions of trying to teach children, not even high school children. It is somewhat controversial because we know the school systems are really trying to commandeer children from their parents, but parents, we don't want to be like this little cartoon here shows. The guy says, we're going to test you. If you do poorly, we're going to fire the teachers. No, we're not going to blame the teachers for everything. There are many teachers out there that all they really want to do, as they refer to them as their children, they want to give them the education that they're there to give them to. But they're put in circumstances that make it so difficult, and there's no one to point the finger to except the parents. If a 11-year-old child can go to school and think it's okay to refer to a 20-some-year-old, 30-some-year-old, 40-some-year-old, 50-some-year-old, 60-some-year-old adult with disrespect and vulgarity. No, that's not the school system's fault at all. That's the parents' fault. And then we can deal with the school system's issues at another point because they exist and I'm not being ignorant to them either. However, how are we declining to such a terrible degree with our children? Because if we don't figure it out, this is another good representation of what is going on in our modern day. And if you think private school is going to make the difference for you, don't trick yourself. Don't trick yourself. So we have to get to the root of the problem, and the root of every problem of every society begins with the adults. So anybody listening to this video, don't start pointing your finger. If you are over the age of 18, you look in that mirror and you point your finger at you, especially if you are a parent sending your child to the public education system, because as we will see as I go on, that's what really counts. What are you sending to the schools? Because that's what makes the schools either good schools or bad schools when there's good teachers trying to do their job. Let's look in on a news clip and video here, recognizing that these are teachers who are trying to do their job despite having to tolerate the violence against the teachers. Parents, unless you're a police officer or military or some type of line of work that puts you in the role of having to deal with violent human beings, do you want to go to your office and worry about violence from some unruly workmate? Violence from some unruly patron? Violence? No, of course you don't. And our teachers shouldn't have to be accepting violence from unruly children. Let's listen in on this video.
County today, a group of teachers will take a stand against what they say has been an almost constant threat of violence in the classroom. The group, called Safe Teach 23, plans to demonstrate outside tonight's school board meeting. And our Matt Gregory is live in Upper Marlboro this morning. And Matt, teachers say that there's just not much law enforcement can do in many of these cases.
Yeah, we talked to the state's attorney, Annie, for the county, and she was saying that her hands are tied, unfortunately, because of state law. In the meantime, like we were talking about, because of those violent incidences that continue to happen, according to Prince George's County teachers that we spoke to, because of that, they are coming here tonight to rally, to try to get some support from the school board to see what the school district can do to help them. So let's take you back to May of last school year. That's May of this year, technically. We introduced you to two elementary school teachers from Potomac Landing Elementary School in Fort Washington. Now, in May of this year, one of the teachers, Renee Calloway, described a brutal attack from a 10-year-old girl and her 12-year-old sister on school grounds. And she says the student was only suspended after the attack for 20 days.
I'm having a hard time accepting the fact that I now have severe anxiety and PTSD.
Just going into school?
Going into the schools, to the school building. But I had to know that it's okay. Like, this is now my new reality.
Now, she and other teachers we spoke to have formed the group Safe Teach 23. Their goal is to highlight the dangers teachers face in certain Prince George's County schools from younger students. Now, they're asking for more support from the school system. They'll be rallying at the school board meeting tonight from 5 to 7 to get that support and demand to be heard. Now, at the same time, we spoke with Prince George's County State's Attorney Aisha Braveboy, because she says she's heard the complaints and is trying to help, but she says Maryland state law makes it difficult.
There are individuals who are young, who commit violent offenses against teachers that, based on the new state laws, will not be referred for prosecution. And so that is an issue that prosecutors are taking up with the state.
Yeah, she says prosecutors are, but she is as well. She's talking to representatives to find out what can be done to sort of get around this, or at least find some way to give some safety to the teachers. In the meantime, Prince George's County schools say that in those schools that have violent behavior, they are offering more counseling services for students, as well as additions to kind of intervene with the violence. They're asking parents as well to step up in this role. Now, tonight, that's when the school board meeting is, from 5 to 7. That's when you'll see Safe Teach 23 here rallying to get support from the school board, and we will have coverage of that, and as well as we follow these incidences of violence here in Prince George's County schools, and we'll bring it to you. But for now, in Upper Marlboro, I'm Matt Gregory. Back to you.
All right, Matt, thank you for that.
I don't see any good reason for anyone to go to work with those kind of concerns on their mind. Do you? You know, while they're going to the state's attorney and everything, where is a better place to go? How about the parents? How about the parents rallying in their own private homes and teaching their children? We're talking about the teacher I spoke to, we're talking about 11-year-olds being violent and disrespectful. How about teaching your children that they have to respect themselves before others can respect them, like it says there? How about teaching them what it means to have respect? Now understand this. First, our children need love, but you don't disrespect who you love. And so we need to teach our children how to respect themselves, their families, their parents, their teachers, and then they will get the same respect. And if everybody's doing that, well then how can the schools be bad if the teachers are trying to do a good job, and their good job is to teach your children, not raise them. It's the parents' job to raise them. And if you let the schools take it from you, you can't blame anybody but yourself, not the system. You see there those scriptures I show that are just sound, simple advice. It's not complicated. Like the proverb, train a boy in the way he should go. Even when he grows old, he will not depart from it. That's not hard work, parents. There is a time when they are born when they look to you for food, milk, water, food, love, everything. They want you to teach them. Start early. Start as soon as you can. before they're even born. But if you haven't, it's never too late to start. Then it talks about the rod and reproof impart wisdom. But a child left unrestrained brings shame on his mother. Now, the rod and the reproof in the Bible is just as much about discipline and mental regulation than it is about whooping their butt. Now, when I was going to school, the teacher could whoop my butt. Okay? That's how much parents trusted the teachers. You can't do that nowadays, because if you do, you'll send a boy to school and get a girl coming back. Same child. You can't do that. It's on you, parents, to do it. And how do you do it? Well, like it says there, you teach them to your children, speaking about them when you sit in your house, when you walk on the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. No different than speaking to plants, trimming and pruning trees. Raise your children. Don't let them just grow up. Because, see, something like this is not the answer. Arming teachers. What parents, teachers, students, and schools need to know. Here's a quote from Amity Nodelmeyer. It is striking that we know very little about the impact of arming teachers on school safety. To the contrary, research on related topic points towards the possibility of negative outcomes or heightened risks. Now, of course, this is relative to school shootings. But let me ask you something. If you got a 5'2", 110-pound teacher who's 52 years old getting stormed by a 5'6", 140-pound fit and young 16-year-old girl, or a 5'10", 180-pound football playing boy, and she's armed with a gun to protect herself while they're busting her face or arms or head, who's to blame if we arm the teachers and then they defend themselves against violence from children because the parents are not teaching their children the basics of life about love and respect, and leave the reading and the writing and the arithmetic to the teachers? And see, like I said earlier, it's really not complicated. I have raised my children, and they turned out to be good, decent men. I didn't have any daughters. But you can see here it says respect is how you treat everyone, not just those you want to impress. Is that too difficult to teach your children? And if you start early, just like raising a tree and pruning a tree, and what is it, whatever that's called, where the Japanese, they form those trees into beautiful little structures. You can create anything you want if you raise it in the right environment, and you prune it here and you prune it there, and you give it the environment to thrive. And if you do that, like it says there, you are raising your children. And like it says, I was raised to treat the janitor the same respect as a CEO. Don't our teachers deserve respect, people? Yes, they do. Because you're sending your kids to them daily, Monday through Friday. And they shouldn't have to worry about the behavior of the children. And it's not the children's fault. And it's not the school system's fault. It's the parents' fault. So if you're going in there rattling it off and telling the school where they belong, now don't get me wrong, sometimes the schools are wrong, but you handle that with a spirit of mildness. I've done it myself. But the key is the golden rule you see there in Matthew chapter 7. All things, therefore, that you want men to do to you, you must also do to them. This is, in fact, what the law and the prophets mean. Now, contrary to the common misstatement of this, it is not do unto others as they do unto you. That is not the golden rule as stated in the Bible. That's reactionary. No, it's proactive. How you want to be treated is how you treat others. And that's what we need to teach our children, starting right now if you are not doing it already. because those unruly children are going to become the architects of whatever system you live in your old age, in our old age. So let's get started, folks. And not just letting our children grow up. How about we raise them? You see, because I was raised, I wasn't just allowed to grow up. I was raised by my parents like the tree, and I was raised by a belief system that I chose early in life, in my teenage years, that there's a higher being that made us just like Ford made cars and you have an owner's manual. The Bible's our owner's manual. But my parents raised me like you see there on the left. I didn't just grow up. I was taught to speak when I enter a room, say please and thank you, to have respect for my elders, and to get off my lazy butt and let the elder in the room have my chair. I said yes, sir, and no, sir, lending a helping hand to those in need, hold the door for the person behind me, say excuse me when it's needed, and to love people for who they are and not for what I can get from them. I was also taught to treat people the way I want to be treated. How about we treat our children that way and we raise them so that the schools can raise intelligent, well-formed adults? Of course, there are other issues we can talk about that the schools are failing in, but that's because the parents let the schools get that far. I'm DK Will. This is DK Will Talk About It. And because I had a conversation with a friend who works in the system, because it was already on my mind and topics for discussion, which is why it came up, I have talked about it. Now have a wonderful day.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right.